7. Matthew 7. This and some folks we've been having on a pretty regular here lately. In the book of Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount covers 3 chapters, and we've gotten through 2 of them, so this is the last chapter. None of these things are new to us, I don't think. It's some really familiar passages, but again, as we talked about when we started this study, it seems to me that the Sermon on the Mount is the time that Jesus challenges his disciples to go above and beyond what perhaps at least the idea that so many people seem to have as to what it took to be a disciple or a follower. Because we know that, well, from what we've read in the Sermon on the Mount, and we've looked at other places, who was supposedly the most religious people during Jesus' time?
The Pharisees.
And what did Jesus say about them?
Root of vipers.
Yeah, hypocrites, and the scribes and the Pharisees and
He
the
starts
religious
off with the
leaders.
Sermon on the Mount, unless your righteousness exceeds those of the Pharisees, you cannot enter the kingdom of God.
Exactly.
Well, they can. The world get out.
So to me, Jesus laid that groundwork at the beginning, and he is now talking to people who would be his disciples, and that's us. We want to be disciples. We want to be followers of Jesus. And so he is challenging us, I think. And he's, as we see, I think it's more than just what you do, right? We talked a lot about the fact that it's doing the right things for what? The right reasons, exactly. And we'll see some of that maybe even in our lesson tonight. Well, definitely, we'll see it in our lesson tonight.
Stan, I don't guess you remember. I guess you're too young to remember the preachers that stood on the street corner in Mayfield and preached.
I don't think I ever saw that.
Well, when I was a kid, it was common that the preacher would, maybe it's not, I don't know the preacher exactly, but
Right.
somebody would stand on the street corner and preach.
Really.
I have seen where there's one on this corner and another one on another corner.
Right. Right. No, I haven't.
Not over 10 or 12 years old at that
Right.
time.
I haven't really heard that talked about very much. Totally different subject. What I remember about around the square is there was a little guy that had a little tamale stand, pushed that little cart.
Oh, yeah. I remember him too.
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that. Well, let's get started in Matthew chapter 7, and let's see what we can learn, how we're challenged tonight. Judge not, that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. I think we could misunderstand this passage if we're not careful. But I think as we continue to read, it becomes more and more evident the kind of judgment that he's talking about. Do you have to make judgments even concerning people sometimes? You do, don't you? Sometimes you've had a position where you had to do that quite often, didn't you? To make some judgments about people. And I don't think that's what this verse is addressing. It's that we could get into some Bible verses of times that we have to look at people, we have to recognize the kind of people that some people are, and we have to make some judgments based upon that. I was taught a long, long time ago, and it makes sense to me, that the judgment that's being talked about in Matthew chapter 7 is critical kind of judgment, okay? Where we are passing, we're passing judgment oftentimes in a critical kind of way, meaning that we're criticizing someone because we think we see flaws or faults in them. And it makes sense to me that that is very much what this passage is about, because what does Jesus, the verses we just read, what does Jesus follow that up with?
Because of the way you judge others, that's how I'm
Right.
going to be judged by.
So when you see somebody that's got a speck in their eye, what does he say?
You're worse than he is.
You got a log in yours, and you're looking at his speck. That's hypocritical, and it is critical too. It's looking for a way to criticize or run down someone in our judgment. Okay, it's a common characteristic of human beings. We can do that, you know. We can be biased. We can be opinionated. You know, well, you know, here's your two choices: Kenny Smith or Todd Templeton. You know, well, I don't know about that Kenny Smith. I saw this. I heard that. I did this. You know, what are we doing? We're starting to find ways to run somebody down or to criticize them. Jesus said, don't be careful how you judge, because what? You're going to be judged. You know, I can talk about somebody, but you know what? Somebody's going to be talking about me too. And ultimately, perhaps Jesus is talking about ultimately, we are going to be judged for sure. We know that by God, by His Son Jesus. And the thing that really hits home in this verse to me is, well, according to Jesus, how are we going to be judged when we are judged? Based upon what? What can affect that or influence it?
How we judge it.
That's right.
And I think, Stan, too, I think a lot of it is how, we're not judged, like you said, if I'm hiring somebody, anybody's hiring somebody, you have to make a judgment, who's gonna be the better teacher? Who's gonna be the better this? You have to make those judgments. I think judging people's hearts and intentions is a big part of what not
More,
judge here.
much more.
Motives, hearts, intentions,
Right.
things you can't see, things that are intangible. Well, I don't think he cares about Jesus. I don't think they care about, well, you don't know their heart, so.
Right. I think that's a good point.
Statement. This, you can even step back. This seems to be like he's another case of, we've got this big kingdom principle here. You don't, you're going to be forgiven like see what I mean?
Yes.
You're going to be forgiven. If you don't forgive people, well, guess what? Then you're not
We
forgiven.
just studied that one in
Okay.
the first chapter.
You're stingy and you're greedy,
That you see.
and you don't have compassion.
Right.
Well, guess what? There's this big kingdom of God principle here about that, and forgiveness seems to fall in that same way.
It does. And that you named a couple of forgiveness is definitely one of those things. Giving mercy and being shown. We've looked at that one too. They are definitely all related, and the principle is just exactly what you're saying. The principle is, folks, you're going to get what you dished out.
Yeah.
And so when you stand before someone where the judgment that they make is really, really important, you know what you better have on your side? A past of being pretty lenient in your judgments about others. If you want forgiveness, if you want leniency, if you want a more positive kind of, I mean, what, okay. I saw Phoebe going down the road the other day in her car, and I'm telling you, she was going all over the highway. I got it. Now then, all right, that's my statement. Okay, make a judgment of tell me some ways that can go. All right, I tell you, what are some ways you can respond?
She's hitting the bottom.
I bet she was drunk. I bet she was drinking.
Nah, she's on that there dope cell phone.
That's them people are getting on their cell phone. You know, who knows that? But we do that. I've been guilty of. We start critically judging. You know, the truth of the matter is, there could have been a wasp in the front seat, and that thing buzzed by her ear, and she's doing her best to smack it. You know, I've almost messed up like that. That's not good, smart driving. But Kenny, if a wasp buzzes my ear, I'm not just going to sit there and see if he's going to see me or not. You know, but y'all understand the point that we're making. When it comes to making a judgment, we've got options. You know, and one person, we might be really critical in our judgment, and there's another person who might say, well, you know, just the other day I got off on the wrong side of the road, and I wasn't drinking, and I wasn't on my cell phone. You know, there was a wasp flying around my head. And they say, so I can't start condemning Theta. I don't know what was going on. I think that's part, now that's on a lesser important level, but that's part of what Jesus is saying here.
I do that sometimes and it's not wrong.
Yeah.
Stan, I gotta tell my.
There's 100 things that'll make you.
Stan, I gotta tell my funny. I had been working all day long at West Kentucky Youth Camp. And I'm headed down the road towards General Tire, and I got a Charlie horse. That's not gonna wear me out. And I pull over to the side of the road, and Deputy Sheriff got right in behind me. And I come right out of the car, and he watched me, and he laughed at me. Now, when he pulled over behind me, he didn't know what was going on.
That's right.
But he saw me grabbing that Charlie horse and walking on the side of the road, and he just laughed and drove off.
Stan, I got a story too, you know, talking about giving people benefit of the doubt. Saying, you know, when you see something like that, saying, I bet there was a wasp in there. Say, I used to work with a guy, and you actually know him. I used to work with a guy, and, you know, we'd have somebody who was just messing up time after time after time. And he had to say, but he's a hard trier. He's a hard trier. You know, that's the best thing you could say. That, you know, instead of all the bad things, he said, no, he's a hard trier.
He found the positive.
He's a hard trier. And
All right.
stick with that. Say,
Stan, I've always heard a lot about this judgment has something to do with condemnation.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I meant by when I said critical.
Yeah.
It's condemning.
Okay, you know,
Yes.
not only am I just making a judgment, I'm judge, jury, and hangman.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So, I think we understand. We may have given much lighter situations, but you know, Jesus says, don't judge, don't be critical, don't be condemning in your judgment. Why? Because you're going to be judged by the same standard that you judge by. That's exactly what the Bible says about mercy. That's what Jesus said in chapter 6 about forgiveness. What did he say? If you won't forgive, what did Jesus say? Neither will your heavenly Father. The Bible says he who would be judged with mercy or have mercy, let him show mercy. Okay? So there's the thing we're looking at. The next section, let's read it because it's going to expound on it. Jesus says, why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that's in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite, he says. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So Jesus is adding on. Not on, there's something that happens when people start judging critically. Okay? What are we often doing when we judge somebody in a condemning way? What might we be doing concerning ourselves? We're trying to cover up we're trying to act like I'd never do anything like that. You know, I've never driven in the wrong lane of the highway in my life. You know, but so I'm qualified to jump on all those who ever get in the wrong lane. Well, that's not true.
And Stan, even I think we can take it a step further. Even if we do know they really are doing something wrong, we've got something wrong. We might not be.
Yeah,
doing
we may have
something
done the
wrong.
very same thing before.
Well, or we might not do that, but we got something else.
Could be worse.
Yeah, the law could be something else.
Right.
The speck is swerving every now and then, but we've got something that's a lot worse.
Right.
You know, that's why you don't judge, is because, you know, even though someone might really be guilty of what you're judging
Right.
of, but you got your own issues, you know.
If having a speck in your eye is worthy of condemnation from somebody else, then what if you've got a log in your eye? What are you worthy of?
Right.
Well, what if you pull up next to Theta and you see that log come up and she's
Right,
taking it
right. Well, you know, then or you might know. And I was going to say, you know, sometimes those are some judgments you have to make. It's like I see you've been catching a ride to school every day with so and so. You know that they've got 2 DUIs in the last year or so, or driving to town early in the morning. You might not want to be riding with them. That, you know, that's not, to me, that's not critical judgment. That's accepting the facts and say, hey, maybe that's not the best person to ride to town. That's good judgment, isn't it? You don't have to condemn the person. You're just acknowledging whatever it is. This thing about the log, obviously Jesus has a little fun with this because people can't get a log in their eye. But it's easy to understand what he's saying, isn't it?
If Jerry Mays was here right now, he would say this: we're not to judge, but we are to be fruit inspectors. We're to say these things.
Can you I think of another saying that I've heard all of my life, and I use it sometimes, that goes with this a little bit. With this idea. Yeah, I know y'all heard it. You ever heard the old saying, that sounds like the pot calling the kettle black? Yeah. It's the same thing. It's like a person with all kinds of faults criticizing somebody else with the same faults, but we seem to be oblivious to our own. And Jesus is just saying that's wrong. He's saying you can actually here's a better way to look at it. This is a good one. We're all going to stand before God to be judged. Obviously, we want to be people who live for the Lord, but what's a specific thing that you can do that will benefit you on the day of judgment? Be gentle in your own judgment. Be merciful. Be compassionate. Don't be condemned, because you're going to be judged with with the standard that you use. It's what Jesus says. So, I like those kinds of things. The same way with mercy, same way with forgiveness, and they're all related, aren't they? Mercy, forgiveness, and judgment, they're all related.
Recently, Stan, I've been trying to encourage somebody that they really messed up. help others, and, people would do me that way.
Right.
And then we would all do each other, yeah, you know what, you messed up. But I'm not gonna make a judgment of your totalness
Right.
based upon that mold.
That's such a good thing, what you just said, Todd. You understand what he's saying? I mean,
But,
who, pardon me?
You made a point, although not to condemn, that, that's, maybe not judge anybody, but, even if somebody does mess up, I think we should be slow to condemn them.
And as Todd says, how many of us, which one of us in here would like to be known for the worst thing that we ever did? We don't want to be, and all of us have done something that's embarrassing, haven't we? We've all acted ugly. We've all done something we shouldn't have been. I don't want to be known for that, whatever that was. I don't want to be known that way. And that's kind of what Todd's saying. He didn't want to judge that person. They made a terrible, terrible mistake. But, that's a part of a big body of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there may be a lot of good, and obviously, hopefully, we'll see more of that good. And that's a little bit the way that Jesus ends this. So what does he say? He say, if you got a log, you got the bigger rock, get rid of that so that you can then do what? Help that person that's got that little speck in their eye, get that out. But now the fact that you've gotten you've got the log out, you've got a little better idea now
Yeah.
how to do that.
And
There's
you
that
see how
wasp that ran feet off.
And you see how that works as well. If somebody has really honestly dealt with a very serious, terrible issue in life, boy, that person's got a lot of, they've got a lot that they can take to somebody with a smart.
Right.
It's just, Jesus' words are just amazing.
Stan, you said nobody wants to be judged by the worst thing they do or the worst five things they do.
Right.
And some people's worst thing is a very private thing.
Right.
Some people's worst thing is very public. And that's different,
Yeah, it is.
You gotta look at somebody who does something that's very public, and you might say, well, what if that thing I had done that's so bad, what if that was public? I wouldn't want to be judged.
Stan,
Yes, sir.
I got lost in Carlisle County here, not long ago.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's three guys standing up there, I'm gonna find out how to get back to Mayfield. Guess who turned around? Old Jay was standing there, he turned around, and I had no idea he was standing up there. I would've went on.
Did he send you? Did he send you to Missouri?
You probably bumped into anybody else, they wouldn't know how it got to make it.
And I had to pull Rob Anderson over. Rob was there too. Rob said, Rob, what is the best way? Because I still don't know my way around that county completely. I heard it.
He wasn't west of the railroad tracks, was he?
No, I tell you what, we were at the hardware store in Cunningham. We were at the hardware store there in Cunningham.
Let's look at verse 6. I think that's a little challenging too. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you.
Stan, I think I know what that means, but I can't, but then I can't figure out what it means where it's put. It's got to have something to
Well,
do with what we're talking about.
I don't know if it does or not, Todd, because Jesus is going from one thing to the other a little bit.
It could be just the way that they put the verses together or something.
In my Bible, it is a different paragraph. It's a paragraph on its
Yeah.
own. But now, still, I understand the point you're making. A lot of times you go. First of all, is he really talking about giving dogs and pigs? If he's not, what or who are dogs and pigs? I really think that's where the explanations I've been given for this verse are that dogs and pigs represent people that perhaps we don't need to be wasting much time with. Are there people like that in the world? I think so too. Why would Jesus, I don't think Jesus is talking about dogs and pigs. You know? He's talking about people. And so, what's he talking about when he talks about something that's holy? And what's he talking about when he talks about pearls?
Google says the holy things and pearls symbolize spiritual wisdom and the gospel, while dogs and swine represent hostile or unreceptive.
Okay. I think what Andrew read, that's the general consensus as to what this verse is about. That now, first of all, we think the gospel is for who? It's for all. It's for everybody. Who did Jesus? Who is Jesus sacrifice able to save? You know, everybody, anybody. But we realize that it doesn't save everybody. Why? Because they don't accept it. They don't do the things that the Lord commands them to do in order to obtain it. There are people, I think, who are not interested, who are very fleshly minded, worldly minded. They're not interested. And I think Jesus is saying, if you find somebody who is just an unholy, unrighteous person, for lack of a better, a pig in this world who lives down in the pig pen. And by the way, one of the first time I heard Jeff Walling preach, he came to the very first celebration, and I told him when they had to get together, I said, until you the title of your lesson, one of those lessons. It was, if you play in the pig pen, you're gonna get hurt, is what he said. And some people play in the pig pen of this world, and they're not interested in anything else. It's about what can I get that satisfies my flesh, my desire, what I want. They'll steal from you in a second. They'll lie to you. They'll do whatever to get what they want. And I really believe that's what Jesus is saying in this verse. Because what does he say about the pigs? And what does he say about the dogs? They'll turn on you. Is that what he says? Lest they trample them underfoot and then turn to attack you. So I believe he's talking about wicked people who are not about to be receptive of the gospel of Christ, and it kind of says to me, you know, don't waste your time.
See, I keep thinking of Esau. He's described as being, you look in the dictionary and the profane.
Yes.
That's what he is.
Right.
He's described as just being profane.
Right.
Whatever is sacred, whatever is special, whatever is holy for him,
Doesn't mean anything.
doesn't mean anything to me. And Stan, I don't know, could that have something to do with about the judgment?
Right.
You know,
I don't know, because you have, but you have,
a judgment we're
yeah,
having.
you have to make a judgment there.
Yes.
You have to make a judgment that this person there's no use in me spending valuable things to try to do something.
Jesus tells his disciples, go to the village and they will listen to you. Shake the dust off your sandals.
Good point, Jay. Good point. You go and you preach the gospel to everybody, right? But there'll be some people who have no interest in it and are going to reject it. What did Jesus say? That's what
He
What
didn't,
Jay
he didn't
said.
say keep pounding it in.
That's
He
right.
said, you know,
Knock the
move on.
dust off your feet. Go to the next town. Go to the next town. And somebody else could say, well, I don't think you ever give up on anybody. I understand that. But, you know, probably the person we're saying, maybe if we're thinking about somebody, we probably don't consider them to be this dog or this pig. We just maybe consider them to be somebody that might still be willing. We might could reach somebody with the gospel. But what does the Bible tell us about the people that were on the earth before the flood came? Their every thought and intention of the heart was only evil, wicked, continual.
God,
And so,
wish he hadn't
God wish he'd never made them. And so all that time Noah was building, Noah was also something else, the Bible says. A preacher of righteousness. And how many people listen? Not a soul.
Amazing.
Stan, sometimes it bothers me though, there are people you don't like to deal with,
Right,
and people that you don't trust.
right.
Well, do you think that you're judging them?
I don't know, Kenny. I guess
I mean, you know.
part of that is just, how well do you know them? What do you know? If you've really seen them do some of this stuff before, then it's not so much judging, is it? It's like, I know what they do. I know who they are.
I've often wondered that.
Yeah. I guess going back to the first part of this, we always try to avoid being condemning I have to stop myself sometimes short of that. You know, I want to talk about somebody's done some old thing, and then I want to go ahead and tell them where they're going to spend all eternity. That's not my place. That's not my place.
Stan, they laugh at me at work. Jamie, I think Jamie, I've been here too. For years, have been the bad guy. Okay? But that's my job. I'm the bad guy. And I have this little thing that Jody didn't laugh at me about writing a book called How to Deal with Toxic People. Okay? I want to get to a place here. And it's a lot of the stuff that's going on. It's a constant battle with ourselves to constantly try to separate their actions from the person and to condemn. I'm trying to get to this place to condemn. To think of it this way, rather than condemning the person, to call out and condemn their actions is different than the person.
I understand.
And I can never say you are a bad person, and I should never say that. But what I can say is that action you took is an inappropriate action,
Right.
and we can't tolerate that.
I understand what you're saying.
But it's tough, Stan. I know it's in this whole world of judgment, you know,
Right.
and
Well, I don't want us, I think that's why we need to understand what kind of judgment he's talking about. Because you choose friends. You need to use some good judgment. It's about judging people. is this the kind of person I need to be a friend with? Would that be good for me? Because sometimes people do not make good friends. They'll get you in trouble. You know, those are judgments that have to be made. But as you said, you
Because
can,
of the actions. that
yes,
they're going
because
to
of
get
the,
you into.
right.
Yes.
And we don't have to say, well, that person's going to hell, so I can't be their friend.
No.
You don't have to say that.
No.
No. No. You say, well, they do things that I don't think are going to be good for me. I don't need to be with them.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that's what Jerry always stayed on us about being fruit inspectors.
Right.
Look at the fruit. Look at the fruit. Judge the fruit, not the person.
We can at least start here. We'll just go, got about 2 more minutes. Everybody knows verse 7 through 11. Let me just, as I read this, I thought of something more than I usually do. Ask, he says, and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and the one to the one who knocks it will be open. Who's that about? Who's Jesus talking to? People like, yeah, us. He's talking to us. He's talking about people who would pray, I would think, because that's when you think about asking, especially knocking, and sometimes even seeking. Don't you think about prayer? Although there may be some other things involved. So that's part of what this section is about. It's about us and what we're supposed to do. But I think there's someone else that this section is about. Because he says, if you ask your father, he's evil, yeah. Your father is evil. And when he says he's evil, he's not saying that he's an evil person. He's just saying he's a sinful person. He messes up. But he knows how to give good things. But then what does he say? If he knows how to give good things, how much more does your heavenly Father? To me, I saw it in studying this lesson better than I think I ever have before. This is 2 things here. First of all, it's about us being a people who ask, seek, knock for things that are good, okay? The other part of this is about the fact that God knows how to give those good things to you if you ask the right way. If he knows you want it. If you're genuine, if you're looking for the right things, then God knows how to give those things. He's able to.
But it doesn't mean that he will.
It doesn't mean that he will, because
Not be as good for you as you think it is.
that's right. Because God has his reasons for not. He knows everything. But, and we'll get into this next time in the lesson. When you ask, is it all about just asking? What else would you say? What else does the Bible say about prayer? If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men liberally, upbraids not, but let him ask in faith, believing that you're going to receive. I've got a verse for us to look at from James chapter 4 and verse 3. He says, you ask and you don't receive. You know why? Because you're asking it to satisfy your own fleshly desires. You're asking the Lord for. I heard a guy at a Christian function one time talking about how he needed help because he'd been praying for a new house. the Lord hadn't given him. And he was having a hard time. Why do we want these houses? You think God's concerned with what model automobile you got? Think he's concerned with how nice your house is? Think he's concerned about how much money you got in the bank? Maybe. I don't think he is. So sometimes we ask for things why? Because I want. It'd be so much fun to